Hey guys, David the Fishing Pastor here, and today I want to give you 2 tips to help you catch those cold water bass. During these cold winter months, as the water begins to cool down, the bass begin to become lethargic and the bite gets increasingly difficult. And if you live in a part of the country like I do, where you can still fish open water during the winter, there are a couple things that you can do to help increase your chances of hooking up on some bass. So today, I want to give you 2 very simple tips that should help increase your hookups, as well as show you some baits that fish very well in these cold water months. Rather than just telling you about these tips, I actually want to kind of demonstrate them for you by showing you some footage of a recent fishing trip that I took. I went out to one of my favorite lakes that I often fish, and during the fall and the spring, this is one of the best fishing lakes because it's a shad lake. So the bass will school up, they'll chase the shad, they're hitting on the surface, they're in the vegetation, they're really everywhere, and you can throw many different lures and they're going to hit it. But as I said, once the water cools down, they become lethargic, they become lazy, they don't want to hit the same things. So I went out this past weekend to do some fishing, and I started off throwing the conventional things that I normally throw, things like crankbaits and shallow diving baits, things like that, and found that they had already kind of transitioned into those cold water behavioral patterns. So after a couple of hours of throwing the same lures that I normally throw and fishing the same ways that I normally fish and getting no bites, I realized that I needed to implement these 2 cold water tips. And the first one is to slow down. Slow down. Let me show you a couple of lures that work really well when you fish them slow in these cold water months. In my opinion, one of the most go-to cold water baits has to be the jerkbait. Now you can definitely fish a jerkbait in other months when the fish are more active, but what's great about it is that once the water cools down, you can change your cadence and then you can get on fish that way. Let me explain what that means. During those months when the fish are more active, you can be more erratic, you can be quicker with it. It could be a twitch, twitch, pause, and you're just bringing it back to you. But as the water gets slower and the bass becomes slower and more lethargic, you just have to increase the time of your pauses. So during these cold water months, you can still throw a lot of the baits that you throw during the other months. You just have to change up your presentation, and like I said, slow down. So if you have something like a lipless crankbait, during the fall or the spring, maybe you're burning it back, maybe you're yo-yoing and being really erratic with it. All you have to do is just slow that down. And maybe you're doing, long big yo-yos and you're letting it fall and bringing it up slowly, and you're kind of fishing it through the column but kind of slow, and some pauses, things like that. Just your presentation has to change. Another great presentation for those cold water months that's going to kind of force you to slow down is just to fish finesse. Now you're talking about drop shots, Ned rigs, shaky heads, things like that. Those presentations that the bass don't really have to work for. They're slow, they're right in their face, and a lot of times they're going to strike not out of hunger but just out of reaction. They just kind of want it out of there, and if you have it in their face, you really increase your chances of getting hooked up. It may be that time to really kind of start breaking out your finesse setups, your spinning rods and reels. Now this is my go-to finesse setup. This is my KastKing Para G2 spinning rod. It's a 7-foot rod and it has a medium light tip. It also has a medium tip that I can throw on there if I need to. But my KastKing Sharky 2 is a 2000 version reel, so it's a smaller reel, and honestly it is my go-to for all my finesse presentations. Now getting back to my story of going fishing last week, and like I said, I had gone for hours without getting any bites. So I slowed down, but I also combined that with the second tip, which is go small. I minimize the size of my lure. Now you don't have to do this. Again, you can try one or the other. I decided to do both, and that's actually what led to my success of catching a fish, and not just a fish, but a pretty nice fish. So here's a bait that I don't fish very often, but actually does really well in the cold water months, and it's a blade bait. Now, it's kind of a mixture between a spoon and a lipless crankbait. It has a really great profile, and it looks very much like a shad. It has a lot of flash to it. And what's cool about it, especially this one, is it has multiple little holes where you can put the snap here at the top. And what that does is it actually changes the way you fish it. Now the closer to the front you put it, the more you want to bring that bait right back to you, you're kind of bringing it back and swimming it back. But if you put it closer to the middle or towards the back, it's because you're kind of doing a vertical fish with it. So again, as the water gets colder, it can be very much a vertical, like a spoon. And so you're just fishing it kind of up and down, putting it right in the fish's face, and they have more time to hit it. In downsizing, you can take something like your normal lipless crankbaits and then just go much smaller with it. And you'd be surprised at how much changing the size of your bait makes such a huge difference. Again, they don't want to work for it. They don't want to, they want to conserve their energy. And so when there's an easy meal or there's something in their face, it's much easier to hit it. Let me show you one more. And this is what I actually caught the fish on this past weekend. You know, now you may think that small baits don't catch big fish, but I can guarantee you they do. Some of the biggest fish that I've caught have actually been on much smaller presentations. And so what I did was I really downsized to catch that fish. I went with a 1/32 ounce jig head stat and a 1-inch minnow imitation bait, and I was just jigging it up and down, and before I knew it, that fish had swallowed the bait.
Go. There we go. Bass, I'm sure. It's a big fish. It's a good bass. Oh, it's a really good bass. Just got in the water for him. Look at that mamma jamma. Oh, holy monkey. Woo, he came off right on the bank. I got in the water to get him. Ooh, my foot's all wet now. Holy monkey. Look at that bass. Look at that bass. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So just to recap, slow down and downsize. You can try one or the other, or you can combine the two. And this doesn't only work during the cold water months, it also works really well in lakes and ponds that are heavily pressured. You're just giving them a different presentation, something they don't normally see. And so the next time you're out and the bite is tough, whether it's cold water or pressured or whatever it is, make sure to give these two tips a try. I really hope that these tips help you to go out and catch some fish in these cold water months. I've even seen people use some of these while ice fishing. So there you go. If you're interested in any of the gear, it will be linked in the description below. Remember to subscribe to the channel, to like, comment on the video, and to always pray, fish, repeat. God bless. I'll see you in my next video.